Hello students! We finally get to the definition. So what is witchcraft? Witchcraft, sometimes simply called the craft, consists of the arts, skills, and knowledge of the witch, usually blended with a spiritual path guided by the goddess and all gods of nature. Some witches prefer to call themselves Wiccan. It doesn't have much green skin and evil potions baggage as the word witch. In many people's minds, Wicca is a gentle form of the craft with a strong ethical and spiritual component that witchcraft alone might not have. We turn to use the term witch and Wiccan interchangeably because a witch without ethics won't last very long. And most of the witches we know do follow a spiritual path as well as the practice of the arts and skills of the craft. The word witch derives from the Old English nouns Wicca and Vice, the masculine and feminine, respectively, meaning sorcerer or sorceress. The plural of both Wiccan and witchcraft was witchcraft. In a turnaround in the mid-20th century, Journal Gardner, sometimes called the father of modern witchcraft, called the people practicing the tradition the Wicca, and their religion witchcraft. The more common usage today is to call the skill and art part witchcraft and the religion part Wicca, but the boundary between them is not always clear. Now, what is the meaning of the word warlock? In popular movies, women are witches and men of the craft are warlocks. Well, that's not really true. The term warlock is used by most witches only to mean a traitor or oath breaker, especially one who has betrayed the coven to those who intend harm against it. Never call a man a warlock unless you mean it to be an insult. A man in the craft is also called a witch. Witchcraft, as is used in this course, is a combination of magic and a spiritual practice based on the sacredness of nature. We can work magic to make changes in ourselves and the world around us. Because everything is sacred, we must use our skills wisely and avoid harming ourselves or others. The truth is that witchcraft is derived from three primary sources: folk religion, shamanism, and ceremonial magic. It is not a revealed religion like Judaism, Christianity, or the Islam. It has no founder or prophet or holy scripture, and no single day where it originated. It just grew. It is a mixture of tradition, revival, recreation, inspiration, and imagination, sometimes called the old religion. And though some of its customs are probably very close to what our ancestors practiced, no one believes that it is the same as it was in ancient times. The folk religion aspect is based on a pre-Christian religion, mostly those of old Europe, although some Wiccans work with the deities in mythology of other cultures. In ancient times, religion wasn't something you did on Sundays. Religion was how life was lived in harmony with the natural world of which people were an integral part. At least that's why modern Wiccans tell ourselves. This is a genuine religion, from the Latin religio, meaning to reconnect. All things are connected, and we can influence the world because we are connected to it. In this way, the religion part and the practice part are joined together and inseparable in our shamanic roots. Just as the witches and wizards of Harry Potter's world had a name for non-magical folk, so do we real witches. Harry and his friends, we call them muggles, right? We also call them cowens. The word is not an insult or a put down, it's just a term for non-witches or non-pagans. Many modern witches that think that the Potter books by J.K. Rowling are great fun, and many have adopted the word muggle as their new word for the people who won't dance in the moonlight. The other part of Wiccan practice is based on ceremonial magic, as it was practiced in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, in which the forms and ceremonial trappings were important in reaching one's magical goal, and belief in what you were doing was often more important than belief in the faith and religion. Magic was largely practiced outside of religion, just as some witches today practice the craft but do not subscribe to the spiritual part of Wicca. When we call the elements archangels or watchtowers that correspond to the four directions, we're using ceremonial magic. When we make long or ornate robes for ritual or wear ritually symbolic jewelry, we are practicing ceremonial magic. Colors for us have meaning. Meanings beyond the form, and all correspondences must be congruent. Anytime we focus on the intellect in magic, we're touching our ceremonial roots. When we consult the ephemeris or star charts to determine the precise timing for our ritual, we are practicing ceremonial magic. The spiritual part of Wicca stems mostly from the core beliefs of ancient nature, and the practice of magic has its origins in both shamanic practice and the ceremonial magic of the Middle Ages. Together, create a rich tapestry that is modern Wicca. However, this blending was not simple, and our history is very complicated. Many thousand years ago, our ancestors were hunters and gatherers living a precarious existence in close connection with the weather, the seasons, the land, the sea, and other animals. They worshipped the earth, and we believe the Great Mother Goddess embodied in the earth. Later they began to worship as well the male principle, personified in the gods. Because they were hunters and relied on wild animals for food, they created beautiful images of bison, antelope, and wild horses, both to honor the prey and to ensure success in the hunt. Yet, when we look at the religious life of Paleolithic humans, what emerges is the vast scope of our ignorance. Maybe you have seen the Paleolithic artifacts, the so-called Venus figures, little carved statues of busty round women that were scattered around Europe 20 or 30,000 years ago. We don't know what they meant to the makers: dolls for children, fertility talismans, pin-up girls for lusty adolescent Paleolithic males, or images of the Great Mother Goddess. We just don't know. All we know is what they meant to us. And to us, they're perfect personifications of Gaia, Mother Earth, our fertile and abundant planet, and source of life and sustenance. By the time of the Roman Empire, many pagan religions coexisted. All have numerous gods, both female and male, who held sway over the many aspects of the natural world, deities of the earth, sea, and sky, of the sun, the moon, and the stars. All the pagan faiths overlap. The gods and goddesses of different lands traveled with merchants and migrations, met and mixed and intermarried. As far as we can tell, religious differences were not usually considered a reason for war. Men might go to battle, to graze land for cattle, or to access to fresh water, but not because their gods had different names and images. Before Egypt and Sumer and the art of writing, nothing is documented, so we can't be certain of much. The Norse Eddas give us a glimpse of the northern pagan faiths. Druids, a totally oral tradition, has only the descriptions left by Julius Caesar and few other Romans, who were not only from a different faith, but the ones who annihilated them. Remember that in the year 60 CE, a final attack by the Roman legions broke the power of the Druids at the island of Mona in Wales, that they might have lingered in Ireland for a few centuries. Witches, our ancestors, had also a non-literate oral tradition, the folkway of the common people. In 325 CE, Emperor Constantine declared Christianity to be the official faith of the Roman Empire. The new faith began to spread over Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Africa. There is evidence that early Christianity and paganism coexisted in some places. The Chaldean Church in Ireland was a happy blend of Jesus lore and traditional folk religion until Rome put an end to it. Early Christian churches in Britain had the stone phalluses on the altars, green men, and Sheila Nagic goddesses on the walls, and special doors in the north walls of the pagans to join the services. However, the Roman Church gained political power and went to war against the pagans, overthrowing the old gods and setting up their own altars in the ancient sacred sites. The old Norse faiths fought a rearguard action for 1,000 years, but they too gradually succumbed. In the countryside, many folks still quietly follow the old ways. They honor the Lady of the Moon and the Horn God. They celebrated the turning wheel of the year. And when necessary, they also attended Mass on Sundays and pretended to be Orthodox Christians. Jews, surviving pagans, homosexuals, and Christians with different viewpoints, heretics, were tortured and often executed during the Roman Church. Women, sometimes widows who have inherited wealth, were frequent targets. In 1320, Pope John the 22nd declared witchcraft a heresy and authorized the Inquisition to act against it. They began the burning times in Europe, which lasted almost 4 centuries. Tens of thousands of people were murdered as accused witches or heretics all over Europe. As we know, in the New World, the persecutions were mostly limited to Salem, Massachusetts, in 1692 and 1693. The burning times ended any life and led deep aptitudes among the different faiths. When people were imprisoned, tortured, hung, drowned, and burned, and accused as witches, few actual witches were about to assert their right to religious freedom. Did the worship of the old gods die in those days, or did it survive underground as our stories declare? Legend has it that the old religion survived but went underground. Secret covens and certain families kept alive the old ways. They celebrated the Sabbaths in wild places. They made turnip jack-o'-lanterns to frighten the Christian folk into staying indoors at night. They disguised their phallic ceremonial staffs as brooms or besoms, and pretended to be good Christian folk. But after centuries of persecution, there were no visible pagan faiths left in Europe. The Roman Catholic Church new rivals were the Protestant reformers. The educated folk of the Age of Reason, or Age of Enlightenment, believed there were no such a thing as witches. Surely, they said, the Inquisition was all about religious power and social conflict, or perhaps mass hysteria. Witches were straight out of fairy tales. But some people believed that surviving covens of witches encouraged this belief and just waited. Just as a note, in 1487, two Dominican monks named Kramer and Sprenger wrote a book called the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer Against Witches, in Latin, explaining in great detail how to capture and torture witches. Included were pre-written confessions that victims, usually women, could be forced to sign admitting to devil worship and worse. The book included a purported papal bull message from the Pope and an endorsement from the theological faculty at the University of Cologne. Some scholars believe these were forged. After it was published and spread around Europe, the persecution of witches intensified. It was reprinted 29 times between 1487 and 1669, and you can still get a copy today if you go on eBay or Amazon.com. Let's learn more about the history of witches and some of the craft as art, skill, knowledge, and practice. I see you in the next module.